it was while you were at the Institute, I guess, that Claire Voisin sent a paper to the Annals that was a counterexample to a conjecture of mine. And so you consulted me about, about the paper, which of course was accepted, but in the meanwhile, the fax machine had to come into being, and you started faxing me questions about it. I started faxing answers, and to some extent, that fax traffic has never stopped. I mean, you've had a very interesting history of collaborations. In the early days in Berkeley, in Princeton, I mean, you had the collaboration with Herb Clemens that produced the paper on the cubic threefold, and my understanding was that a lot of the difficulty in writing the paper was that, beyond the beautiful geometric argument, you had to, actually write down a lot of stuff that was part of folklore or hadn't really been nailed down that you needed. And so it became kind of this project that really laid the foundations of that whole geometric part of algebraic geometry. You, of course, collaborated some with Wilfried Schmidt, and I mean, there's still, as we keep encountering now in our collaboration, Griffiths-Schmidt varieties that came out of that. Then you had an extended collaboration with Joe Harris, again, a former student, and somehow swept up in that were also collaborations with Mauricio Carnalba and Enrico Arborello on very classical problems in algebraic geometry, particularly the Brill-Noether problems and some moduli problems. And in addition, you and Joe wrote this enormous book on the foundations of algebraic geometry from the complex analytic point of view. There were other books, but in some sense, since Hodge and Padot, there really had not been kind of an attempt to bring the geometric side into something that people could use, and that became certainly I trained a lot of my students initially reading that. I was fortunate to get what you might call an advanced copy. I had Xeroxes of all the existing chapters. I had spent a year at MIT, and I had brought a big trunk with me, and the entire bottom of the trunk was lined with this manuscript. I was very relieved when the book came out. And that's a book that still is in circulation in a paperback version now, and I think also probably in numerous pirated versions in other countries.
That collaboration took place between the hours of 5 and 7 a.m. for the most part. And Joe at that time was working during the night, sleeping during the day. So he'd roll in from his office over in the Science Center and be having a beer and his dinner. And I'd come down and be having coffee to get the day underway. And 5 to 7 in the morning was a very peaceful time in the house. The kids weren't up yet, and so on.
Yeah, when you said 5 to 7, it didn't tally initially with my recollections of Joe's habits, but now I understand. And that, that lasted for quite a few years. And I think there are 1 or 2 papers that I'm involved in from that period. And then certainly one of my favorite pieces of my own work was, in answer to a conjecture that you and Joe had made in one of the infinitesimal variation of Hyde structure papers, which, I guess I was a co-author on the first one, and this was maybe the third one that you had these conjectures in. And then, I mean, that was all a very fruitful set of things. And it was solving some of those problems where I cut my teeth on algebra and really had to learn it. Now then you had an extended period collaborating with Robert Bryant, and again that resulted in a book, a couple of books, but the basic book on exterior differential systems that is probably the main source now for the modern theory that you and he and Chern, and now I'm forgetting your fourth author.
There was Robbie Gardner.
Oh, okay, right. Okay, Robbie Gardner, yeah. Who was Robert's advisor.
And was Chern's student.
Then you succeeded in attracting Robert to Duke during the period you were there. He had been at Rice, and you had already started collaborating, I guess, at that point. But then, I mean, you were collaborating with him at Harvard. I remember vividly. And then, I guess after that, our collaboration started with some maybe gap.
Which has had multiple phases now, different subjects.
It started with really being focused on algebraic cycles, and then after an extended period of that on deformations of algebraic cycles, it resulted in a book. Then we had Matt Kerr became involved, and we had the Mumford-Tate groups, which brought in some number theory, which of course Matt was the one who really knew the most about, and some representation theory, which...
That's your department.
Which became my department, but which I had to learn a lot of. And that kind of in turn has then morphed into the project on arithmeticity that is even more number theoretic, but also brings in more complex analysis and a lot more algebra, and sort of is kind of stretching the boundaries in all directions.